Well, we're on the eve of Aurora rotating out of the format, and at the Battle Hardened in Minneapolis this past weekend, it wasn't Aurora taking it down, though not for lack of trying, no. Instead, it was Andrew Rothermel picking up the win on my favorite hero in the game, and that's Kasai. And I'm so happy about this because it highlights the fact that Kasai is still one of the coolest heroes in the game of Flesh and Blood, one of the most flexible heroes, and one of the most fun heroes to play as and play against. I know on the eve of Aurora rotating, the storyline was that Aurora was this hero that people loved to play and to play against. I would argue that Kasai is just straight up better. And Andrew Rothermel showed us a new way to build Kasai, specifically more like aggro Kasai, a new way to build aggro Kasai, and we're going to talk about it because it is pretty incredible. By the way, if anyone's going to win with it, Andrew Rothermel might as well be the one to do so. He is perhaps one of the most consistent players in the game of Flesh and Blood. Like, if you're picking names for people to win or at the very least be in a top 8 of a major event, you're thinking like your Michael Fungs of the world. You're thinking, well, there's a lot of people you're thinking. There's a good chunk, but I would put Andrew Rothermel in that category because he shows up time and time again, and it was cool to watch him win, and of course, do it with this list. This is the Kasai list that he picked up the win with, and there's a couple of really interesting things about this list. Now, for those that don't know, I have played a lot of Kasai. In fact, this right here is my Kasai deck. It is completely foiled out. I have every card in foil in this deck, and I have multiples of like the sideboard and like other swap in, swap out cards all in foil. I have played a lot of Kasai and CC. She's my favorite CC hero. She surpassed Kano in doing so maybe about a year ago, a little less than a year ago. I kind of just jumped on the bandwagon and I never left. And I'm super happy to see this iteration of the deck list because there are some crazy things that you wouldn't normally see. And the first one, of course, is draw swords. Now, I bring this up because as I was watching the stream and I saw a draw swords be in pitch, I only tuned in to the end of the stream and towards the beginning of the stream because I was so busy. But when I saw this in pitch, I freaked out because draw swords is a card that I tried very little of, but I lost to. I was playing as another hero and I played against a Kasai. This was like maybe 6 months ago, and they were playing some sort of a draw swords variant at the time, which I had never seen, and I'd only ever seen to that point. And it rolled me over, and I was like, this is the craziest thing. I was like, this is either a high roll or this is the truth. And I wrote down that I needed to try it out, and I never really got around to it. But why is this card so crazy? Look at it. On the face of it, it's too expensive. It costs 3, it does block 3, and the red is a +3 buff, but then it draws you a card and goes again. Now, the crazy part about this is, of course, in concert with Kasai of the Golden Sands hero ability, where you draw a card and your swords are free, this card goes from a super below rate 3 resources for 3 value and replacing itself, which is actually not below rate when you think about it. The replacing itself is pretty huge. But even just like pitching and paying like a full blue in a deck that is so heavily predicated on building in reds and yellows, the current iteration, I say that now because I think it's going to fundamentally change at least a little bit, or it's going to open the door. The current iteration of Kasai was so heavy on reds and yellows and a little light on blues to the extent that you really couldn't consistently play this card unless you were pitching reds and yellows. And so that would make it block fodder, and then it was just not getting you the value that you needed. But when you look at the overall stats of what this card can do if you have a blue, it gives you 2 resources for not having to pay for your swords, right? So if you're netting that cost off of the original cost, like you were pitching a blue anyway to play sword into Blade Runner into sword, Now you don't even have to do that because you're discounting 2. So this essentially costs 1 if you have a source of Go Again. That's the key point there. It's drawing you that card, so it is replacing itself, which means you can dig for a source of Go Again. And it's giving you a +3 buff, so it's giving you a front pump. So this is like if you were to combine Outland Skirmish, the first half of that for the +3 attack, alongside of, like a discountable ability, maybe even like Gorganian Tome. This is like putting these 2 cards together. And it's all like the value here is predicated on being able to pay for it. So we see a lot of changes around this, and they're subtle changes. If you haven't played a lot of Kasai, here's a couple of things. Like number 1, in the main board, you only have 3 copies of Blade Runner, and it's only the blues. That's huge, okay? Normally, you look at these types of deck lists, and you're looking for anywhere between 27 and 30 sources of Go Again for these swords. Or you're looking to play the Hot Streak instead of 2 Centauri Sabers. And instead here we see 2 Centauri Sabers, and if you count it up, there's this sneaky amount of Go Again tucked in. On the face of it, it doesn't look like there's much, right? Spoils of War for 3, Unsheathed makes 6. You can count Blood on Her Hands if you really want to, but it's more of a combo piece. You can use it in a pinch. But we got 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24. But then you have the sneaky copies of Sharpened Senses. This is a card that I came onto when it came out in the Hunted, and I was very happy with it. At first, I heard a lot of people saying it's not really that worth it, but man, if you're playing aggressive Kasai, it is very much worth it, because this is the Go Again if you're playing attack reactions. Now, this right here doesn't have a lot of attack reactions built in. In fact, if we're looking, it only has Blade Flurry and In the Swing in the main board. So you're not really looking to combo this with attack reactions that are immediately buffing what your sword is doing right then and there. You're doing that with front pumps. And of course, now we have a lot of front pumps, both in the form of draw swords and slice and dice. Only 2 yellows instead of the 3 yellows, which is, totally fine. And not only that, you have Eye of Ophidia. Now, here's the cool part. I heard Andrew talking about this Eye of Ophidia, and just in general, knowing what the top of the deck is so that you know what you're drawing into with draw swords. And that's such a cool little optimization, because if you're playing Eye of Ophidia and a couple of these Fate for Scenes in the sideboard here, now you're able to kind of peep the top of the deck, see if it's a card that you actually care about or you could really use. And in that moment, in that pinch, you could say, no, I don't need this, or no, this is not a source of Go Again. I need to try and dig at least 1 card down to get a source of Go Again. I think it's brilliant. I think it's so cool, and it's such an interesting way to take this version of the list. Now, for comparison, this was the version of Kasai that I was running very heavily in a couple of competitive seasons ago, and it has some very similar bones, some very similar structures. I was, and most recently have been, on Hit and Runs. I think Hit and Run is super cool. As we compare that over here, the yellows and blues are included in Andrew's list. The reds are fun because they can apply a buff to an attack action card, but that's another notable change to Andrew's list. He's cut attack action cards completely from the list. Like, there's nary an attack action to be found. No CNCs, no Nourishing Emptinesses, which is a card that I think is fantastic, but it does have its moments where it's a little bit awkward, a little bit clunky. And if you just cut that out completely, by the way, yes, Seduce Secrets, hell of a card. Run in Andrew's list as well. This is like basically a Gorganian Tome from the arsenal, and it also allows you to just see what your opponent has so that you can play around attack reactions and the like. Super, super cool. But not having attack action cards means that you don't have to worry about the buff effects here. They're just for pure value on your weapons. You don't have to worry about like lining them up with attack actions. You don't have to worry about like Codex of Frailty, pulling an attack action card from your graveyard that you haven't cleaned up, which, by the way, Kasai is actually pretty good at cleaning out her graveyard so that it doesn't get affected by Codex of Frailty. But this version, where you're heavily leaning on these front pumps on Slice and Dice, and especially Draw Swords with Unsheathed, of course, is so fun. It's so cool, and it has great little sideboard here. I love this single copy of Yellow Blade Runner. It's one of those things where you're like, Of course, a one copy of Yellow Blade Runner that you could just splash in seems so hilarious to me. And the nice thing too is if we compare, like, here's the list that I was playing: 15 blues, 15 yellows, but 24 reds, okay? And then of course, this has 6 sideboard slots, and usually they would be made up of like reds, Sink Belows, for example, or Iron Song responses, and I tried to splash in like 2 yellows, excuse me. So it'd be like 3 yellows and 3 reds would go in. That would put our numbers up to like 18 yellows, but 27 reds. The cool thing about this list is that in making the space for more yellow cards, you're cutting down on the reds, which means you have less of these all red hands, which means you have more opportunity to play multiple null rune pieces and actually extract value from them over the course of the game. Super cool. And I'm so pumped to see Kasai in a slightly different variant. The cool thing about this is that it allows, or it highlights the fact that Kasai is one of those heroes that can be built and successfully played in a variety of different ways. She can be built this way, and it was working for me. Like, this still works for me. It's a solid build. There's like some little things here and there that I keep tweaking, like what blues I include, and like the attack actions, the attack reactions, they all work fairly well together. But this list from Andrew is so cool, and it's so good, and it's so smooth. I'm really pumped to see Kasai make her return to the meta. And the best part is it's happening right as the best aggro deck in the format, which just did better numbers than Kasai for the most part, and kind of forced a lot of heroes to either try to race that hero or play a kind of turtle-y style gameplay. It allows Kasai to maybe come back in a real and meaningful way for maybe like 2 weeks before we get pirates, of course. And you know what's funny? Kasai is probably the coolest and most thematic pirate that we've seen, including the upcoming pirates. I mean, she might feel more piratey. Think about what she does. She gets gold from hitting her opponents, and then not only that, she builds a crew. She's the ultimate pirate. She always has been. She always has been the ultimate pirate. So I'm super hyped. There's no way that she gets support from High Seas, but man, she's very piratey. She's very piratey. So regardless, I'm going to be playing pirates going forward, but Kasai will remain one of my decks of choice in Classic Constructed. And who knows, she might still be my favorite deck, going forward, even though, of course, we're hard committed to the pirate lifestyle going forward. If you're excited about Kasai and you think that she's the coolest deck in the land, the coolest hero, a fun hero to play against even if you don't enjoy playing her, let me know that in a comment below. And of course, if you want to support the channel, I have some links in the description. You can buy yourself a nice t-shirt from Into the AM. You can rep that alongside of me as High Seas comes closer, but doing so gets you 10% off in the link in the description, and it supports the channel here as well. As always, everybody, make the number go to the other number, and thanks for watching.